KOCT, its board of directors, staff, and the City of Oceanside do not support nor promote any candidates. We provide the following program as a public service for voters. All candidates have been invited to participate in this program, but not all were able to or chose to do so.
Good afternoon and welcome to this special edition of KOCT Election 2024 coverage here on North County Roundtable. My name is Kent Davey. I am a retired newspaper editor and independent journalist. I'm also chairman of the KOCT Board of Directors. Today we're featuring the candidates for the race of the 74th Assembly District, Democratic Party challenger Chris Duncan, and incumbent Republican Assembly member Lori Davies. This is a rematch of 2022 for the two-year term for a district which includes southern coastal Orange County and parts of North County. Included in the North County portion are Oceanside, Vista, and Fallbrook. For today's forum, each candidate will be given up to 2 minutes or 2 or 3 minutes for an opening statement and the same for a closing. I'll alternate questions between the candidates, give each the opportunity to respond. We intend for this to be conversational so that no one's on the clock, but I will gently cut off answers that threaten to turn into a filibuster. The broadcast is being this broadcast is being live streamed on koct.org and Cox Channel 18. It'll be available on video on demand and will be rebroadcast on our Cox Cable channel. With that, Lori, would you like to begin with your opening statement?
Thank you. I greatly appreciate the opportunity. Hi, I'm Assembly Member Lori Davies, representing the 74th District. As you were saying, this is both South Orange County and North San Diego. I've had the opportunity to serve in 2020, 2022, and obviously now going for 2024. I'm very proud of my record when it comes to our bills. In the last 4 years, we've been able to go ahead and get 19 bills signed into law, and there's 3 waiting on the governor's desk. With those bills, it was a bipartisanship across the floor, Senate and Assembly, that got those through. I can tell you that it's really an honor to be able to have the opportunity. I've also worked with bipartisanship. I was asked to join the California Caucus of Problem Solvers because that's really what we need to do. We need to work across the aisle. And in this caucus, what we do is we come together and we make good policy. You know, the best policy is when you've got everyone at the table and making sure that it's beneficial to everyone and not harmful to anyone. You know, I ask about what are the big concerns in our district, and first one, affordability. I mean, we're spending 60 cents taxes per gallon every time you're putting gas into your car. Also, we look at the cost of food going up almost 30%. And then we also look at the cost for rent or even the opportunity to buy a house. It's out of control. We talk about safety. And let me ask you a question. Do you feel safe? Do you feel safe when you walk your neighborhood? Do you feel safe when you go shopping? Do you feel safe when you drop your kids off at school? You should. But due to policy that has been up in Sacramento, basically making criminals not have to be accountable for what they're doing, has actually put us all into jeopardy. I think it's very important that when we come together, that we are all at the same table. So for me, I've had the opportunity to work with everyone, with law enforcement, with trades, with farmers, all of those that are key, especially in our district. And what's important to me is what's important to you. It's your agenda. It's not mine. And that's where we come up with the ideas to make sure that we can solve the problems in the 74th District, but also make sure that it's not one size all and it benefits the entire state. I thank you for the opportunity today. I'm looking forward to answering your questions. And I'm grateful for you giving me the opportunity to have served you for the last 4 years.
Thank you very much, Lori. Now we turn to Chris Duncan, who is the mayor of San Clemente. Chris.
Thank you, Kent. Yes, good afternoon. I'm Chris Duncan. I'm a former border prosecutor and mayor and father of 3 kids. First I'd like to note that it's important we're having this debate on September 10th, on the eve of September 11th. That was a tragic day for our nation. And it was very, very personally meaningful for me. I was very close to the Pentagon when the plane hit, and I saw the devastation. I lost a college roommate in the Twin Towers in New York. And with a patriotic spirit, 9/11 really inspired me to serve and protect our country and make us feel safe, protect us from attacks like that, and make sure attacks like that never happen again to our families. So I volunteered to serve, and as a border prosecutor, I worked every day to secure our borders, to make sure that dangerous people and weapons of mass destruction aren't allowed in our country. I worked hand in hand with Border Patrol agents to stop terrorists, cartel members, and violent criminals from coming across our border. And I prosecuted drug smugglers and child sex traffickers to keep our kids safe. And ultimately, I decided to run for local office because I wanted to keep our own community safe like I had our border. And so as mayor of San Clemente, we hired more police officers. We drove down homelessness 23% in 1 year. We helped our small businesses get through the pandemic, and we saved our beaches. I secured $10 million of federal funding to save our beaches, which is critical to our local economy. But when I travel around our district and I talk to voters, from Oceanside all the way up to Laguna Niguel, really they say the same thing. They do say they're struggling. They say they're hurting. It's hard to make ends meet. And a lot of times they say they don't feel safe and they wish there was more public safety. But more than anything, they want someone who shares their values, and they don't think they're getting that right now. So they want to change. People are eager for a change. I agree. They're hurting. Costs are too high. Public safety's a concern. I'm a parent. I drop my kids off at school, and we have to worry about our kids. We shouldn't have to. So they want to change. They want someone who helps them make them feel safe. And that's what I've done, frankly, in my entire career. As a border prosecutor and as a mayor and frankly as a dad. So as we look to the future, I'm very optimistic we can make that change. I'm a lifelong Californian, and I believe in the California dream. And I want to ensure everyone in our district, from veterans to working class families, to all of our kids, get to have that brighter future they deserve. So I'm asking for your vote to be your next assembly member to deliver that California dream for all of us.
Thank you very much, Chris. Let me start with a kind of an open-ended question that I'm curious about. What makes you a better candidate for voters to choose than your opponent?
I appreciate that question, Kent. Well, first of all, again, people are looking for a change. They're not satisfied with the way things have gone in California. My opponent's been there for 4 years. During that time, things have gotten worse. Things have gotten more expensive, and they feel less safe. And my track record as a border prosecutor with Homeland Security and as a mayor show that I've been able to accomplish that, right? Hiring more police, as I mentioned, hiring more firefighters, getting more equipment for our firefighters, making sure that our small businesses got through the pandemic and we got people back to work. People have seen that success. They've seen our beaches saved. I took the train down here today. Our beaches have more sand than they have in years. And that was during the time I was mayor, able to secure that funding. So, I have a track record of delivering for our community. People notice that, and that's contrasted with my opponent's track record of 4 years in Sacramento not getting the job done.
Okay, let me ask you, Lori, the same question. What makes you the better choice for our voters than your opponent?
Why I think really who the people want is that I work across the aisle. And I can tell you, when I ask anyone, whether it's colleagues, Democrats, Republicans, they're saying, you know what, we need to have balance here. We need to have more like-minded people that will work across that aisle. And I think that's what's really important. And I have a saying, I say, leave your party and your politics at the door. We're talking policy. And that's something they're like, we've been waiting for that for such a long time, because we do have a supermajority up there. And we have to have balance. And the only way you're going to have good policies, and we talk about the policies such as affordability, we talk about crime. You know what? These are policies that have been made with the supermajority. So it's time that people come to the table and we actually see what we're doing, because they affect everyone. And so not only that is, but I'm one that is, you know, when I say I'm going to do something, I'm there. I have heard so much about being in the district and saying, you know what, the last person that represented us really wasn't there. I go out there. That's how I found out what the issues are. You know what? I'm there working with the vets. I serve as vice chair for a veterans committee. You know, I'm out there talking to lower income, talking to the Latino Hispanic community. You're like, what are your issues? You know, I go out to where the people are, because that's where I get my insight, and that's where, you know, I understand, you know, really what's happening to them. It's not my agenda, it's their agenda.
Okay, let me follow with used to be that you would hear reporters talk about follow the money. So let's follow the money for just a second. In 2022, California posted a $97 billion surplus. This year, you and Sacramento talked about a $56 billion deficit. That seems to suggest that the state's revenue and budget systems are totally broken to somebody like me. Do you agree? What do you do about it?
Actually, I do agree. And the first thing people have to understand is we don't have a revenue problem in this state. We have a management of funds in this state that is mismanagement. When we had the surplus, almost $100 billion surplus, that money was used for one-time funding. That also was money that came from the federal COVID money. It wasn't money that we had secured. And so budgets were passed. I can tell you that a lot of those budgets I didn't support, because I knew, like anyone, things were going to change into the next year. And here we are in 2022. You're looking at a budget that is now actually technically about $76 billion in deficit. And do you understand that $30 billion of that was lost in people leaving the state? Corporation taxes, employers, you know, people that can't afford to live here anymore. You look at the business climate, the mandates, the regulations. $30 billion of our tax dollars just walked out because of policy that keeps being pushed through. You're not going to be able to get that back.
Chris, tell us about how you view this revenue budget problem that seems to come up in wave after wave in this state.
Well, I think accountability is incredibly important. And following up on the other question, my opponent has sort of dodged responsibility by saying she's not part of the supermajority. Well, I'm not part of the supermajority in San Clemente. In fact, I'm the first Democrat ever elected. And yet, as mayor, we got everything done we needed for our residents. We balanced our budgets. We did not raise taxes. We put our citizens back to work. We helped our small businesses. We added more police and fire, right? So this can be done. But I think the first thing is you have to show up for the vote. My opponent did not show up for the vote on the budget. So you can't criticize something when you didn't show up for the vote on it, right? It's an incredible problem. As we talked about, this state is unaffordable for residents, and it's causing people to leave and small businesses to consider leaving. But the fact is, budgets do go up and down. You have to manage them effectively. That's why we have a rainy day fund. And that's why we ensure we have the appropriate budget for critical programs. A critical program is supporting law enforcement in their efforts to battle fentanyl from coming into our community. And my opponent did not support that legislation. So when we talk about making sure that this state is fiscally responsible, as we've done in San Clemente, you have to show up for the votes. You have to show up and make sure that the citizens' voice is being heard in those discussions. My opponent has not.
Okay. There is a term, existential threat, that is thrown about with abandon nowadays. If we set aside the idea of nuclear war, which seems to be clearly an existential threat, sure. Do you see anything that becomes an existential threat to California or to our society?
Well, I'll tell you one thing I've alluded to it already. Our coastline has eroded. right?
And that's an existential
It's
threat?
an existential threat to our local economy
Okay.
because without a coastline, this is a coastal district, our businesses will go under. They're completely centered around our coastline, right? So in addition to the effects on our environment from things that we've seen just this last week with the incredible heat, right? That is a threat to us. More pragmatically and more locally, if we don't have sandy beaches and we don't protect our coastline for our future generations, there isn't going to be a coastline here because all of our businesses will be driven out.
How do you do that?
Well, here's what you do. You work with federal partners and state partners and county partners to deliver sand for our beaches, to protect that infrastructure. Sand on our beaches is just like how we protect against wildfires. It's just like roads and bridges. It's infrastructure that protects homeowners, and our local businesses, as well as other infrastructure. I worked with our Congressman Mike Levin to deliver $10 million to protect and save our beaches. My opponent delivered $0 million from California. Our tax dollars, you know where they went instead? San Francisco and LA, instead of to our district. When I get to Sacramento, I'm going to make sure our state tax dollars, and by the way, we're a donor tax area, right? We pay our taxes. That money goes elsewhere. Our tax money should come back to protect our own infrastructure, not other areas. I'm going to do that.
Lori, do you see anything that exists as an existential threat to California, our society, or the coastline, I guess?
Absolutely. And when it does come to coastal erosion, he's exactly right. You know what? That is a tourist area. We're a tourist district. And if we don't have TOT tax coming in, we don't have retail sales coming in, we don't have the hospitality, we don't have revenue that goes to the cities that provides for public safety, provides for infrastructure. And one thing that I found that was really important is that in order to be able to get bills, two coastal erosion bills that I had that went across the aisle. And what we did is I said, listen, people have to have an understanding of why this is so important to us. Because you look at California and we all have different issues. Central California has water issues. Northern California has issues. So what we did is I got the problem solvers, 30 members, bipartisan, to come down here. We went into the harbor, we took 3 harbor boats, and we went on patrol boats, and we had geologists on every boat. And we showed them the coastal erosion, what we're dealing. We showed them where we've lost cliffs with Casa Romantica. We showed them where the railroad, which brings billions of dollars every year of goods, also national security, commute and tourism, why it's so important for us to have that. And when they got back, they said, you know what, if we wouldn't have seen this, we wouldn't have understood, we really wouldn't have thought much. And I said, but you have to understand that our issues are all California issues, and your district too, because if we don't have the money, that the income is coming in, the revenue coming into these cities, that means then you're going to the state to try to get money, which means that's money coming out of their pocket that they could use for their issues as well. And so that's why it's all about education. It's important that we know everybody's issues so that we can get behind them. But I had 2 coastal erosion bills that I'm very proud of. Number one was getting funding, and I did work with Catherine Blakespear, Senator. We did bring in funding, especially for the San Clemente issue when we had Casa Romantica come down, over $1 million to be able to help that. Working with OCTA as well to get that up and running. But the first bill, which I think is really important, is when you get grants and funds for projects like coastal erosion, the number one thing is sometimes you won't get that money for a year. So that project just sits there. What this does is it allows it to mainstream. You'll get the first 25% up front so you can actually start the project, something you haven't done before. Also, working with the Coastal Commission. You know what, it's very important that we're on the same page to get things done and to streamline. What we're doing now is it allows you to have an expert, such as a geologist, someone that knows building, so that they can go to them when they have questions, especially when it's determining whether or not they're going to go ahead and move forward. Both of those bills were signed into law.
Mm-hmm. A money issue that my neighbors are concerned about because it's been unmercifully hot lately and their air conditioning bills are through the roof, is the issue of electricity in this state. Electricity prices are among the highest in the nation at this site. Reports say that China is building 26 new nuclear plants to add to its inventory of 56 that it already has. It will become, basically in response to carbon emissions, it will become considerably more carbon free. And that's baseline load. Should California turn around and follow Bill Gates's plan in Wyoming and start building nuclear plants?
I think we have to look at all opportunities. We can't just, count on electricity. We obviously know that we do not have the grid right now. We have to look at hydrogen. That's really big right now, especially in California. We have to look at windmills. We have to look at solar. We have to look at the other options. And it's not just China. There's a lot of other countries that are going to small nuclear plants because it is a clean form of energy. But we have to make sure that there's options, and cost is number one. That's really important. So I think that we need to look at all options and and find out what works best. And again, it's not one option across there. We have to have what we know right now. When you have a heat wave, and you have the governors talking about please do not charge your EVs. That's not going to work. We have to know that we've got something we can rely on 24/7.
Chris, what about nuclear in California? What do you think?
Well, thanks, Kent. Now, first, I do want to correct the record from the prior question. My opponent here has written a lot of letters, but hasn't actually gotten a lot done to help our coastal erosion. In fact, with Casa Romanica, which is the most historic building in San Clemente, it's the house of our founder, Ole Hansen. Actually, there were a lot of promises made and no one else delivered, so the city had to pay to protect Casa Romanica and build back the hillside, $8 million entirely from city funding. We didn't get any help from the state, county, or others who had made those promises, so I want to make that clear first. Now, getting to your question. Yes, of course, we need to look at all options, right? And we can't close off any other options. But I want to highlight, and by the way, there is micro-nuclear technology, safer, that I do think we should pursue, right? And that is cutting-edge technology that needs to be one of our considerations, especially in our coastal district, where we see the effects of climate change more than other places, and we know that there's a need to stabilize our climate, including driving down emissions, carbon emissions, as you mentioned. But I want to highlight one thing. We also house more stored nuclear waste than any other district in the whole country. At the decommissioned San Onofre nuclear power generation plant. Now, our Congressman Mike Levin's been working for years now to move that waste out of our area, right? We are sitting in our district, right in the middle of a district, an incredibly dangerous situation for our residents. We shouldn't have to have that danger looming over us. Parents like me shouldn't have to worry about that nuclear waste getting into our community. So one thing I want to do, in addition to making sure that we do have our power grid taken care of, is get that nuclear waste out of San Onofre. And I will do that in the assembly, because there is a state role here, more than just writing letters. There's a state role in finding locations to move that nuclear waste. So as we look at continued power generation, I think first and foremost, public safety. We need to make sure our community is safe, and they're not safe now with that nuclear power, nuclear waste sitting on our doorstep at San Onofre. It needs to be moved, and I'll do that.
And I'd like to, if I could, just jump in on that. I have been working with congressmen in regards to that, and we actually had a resolution put through saying that it is the federal government's job. Since 1980, it is their job, if they decommission a plant, to remove that, and they haven't been doing their job. And so we are putting pressure on. We had an anonymous vote across the table to support that and to bring it to the issue. And you know what, we're looking at locations, but you have to make sure that these locations also really want it. Do the people that live there want this? So yes, it's completely, public safety comes first, especially when we're looking at nuclear plants. But we have to make sure that we have options. We have options to choose from.
Okay. Both of you have talked, I believe, in at least your websites and other media about helping the middle class. What specifically would you do to help the middle class?
That's for me? Yes, I mean, look, rising costs are just punishing, frankly, on our middle class families. At grocery stores, yes, at the pump, for our seniors on a fixed income and our veterans when they get medicine, those costs are incredibly high. And at the state level, we can work to drive down those costs. So that's something we can do right away. But I'd like to propose something we haven't done in a long time, a middle class tax cut, right? That's what our families really need.
Of the income tax that we're talking about?
Yes. And, that is something that people kind of think is a dream. Oh, well, that can't happen. Yes, it can. In fact, if we do the middle class tax cut, right, instead of giving tax cuts to rich corporations and big oil companies, if we give the middle class a tax cut, I think you'll see our economy take off like it hasn't in years. And we can get closer to that California dream. So in addition to driving down those costs, and by the way, housing is part of that, right? We need more housing at all income levels, not just at the low income level as frequently gets talked about. We need all income levels so that my kids can continue to live in this district, right? Housing is a crushing cost and rent is a crushing cost. The state can do a lot to make sure that we can have more housing built at all income levels, that we can drive down those costs of everyday goods. But I think the kicker is that middle class tax cut. And it doesn't have to be much, but if we are able to do that, we can get our middle class back on their feet and really thinking positively about the future, that bright future that I believe in.
Lori, same question.
Absolutely. You know, we talk about a middle class tax cut, which right now I can tell you that we've been supporting renters having a tax credit because, again, the cost continues to go up. The cost to be able to buy a house, same thing. But we have to remember of the policy that is being pushed up there sometimes where it's, we're going to put this on the big corporations. And what happens is when you have to be very careful when you're pushing bills because it usually trickles down to the middle class and the lower income. And so, you know, it's very important that when we have policy there that we understand the repercussions. A bill may look very good up there, but are they looking at the repercussions of how it's actually going to affect the middle class? It is unaffordable to live here. I know I came here when I was 18 from Wisconsin. I was able to buy a car. I was able to put myself through school as a waitress. You know what? It was a California dream. It was affordable. It's not that anymore. And so that's why it's so important that we're looking at policy. We need to be able to mainstream building. We talk about housing. But in order to have housing, we have to make sure that we have infrastructure because you can continue to you know, put homes up there. But when I was talking to our firefighters in Oceanside, they're like, we don't even have water pressure up there. So we can't be there. So we have to make sure it's just not one thing. We work together. We have infrastructure and we have, you know, that ready to go. You've got jobs so that you can have people stay within the city. You've got workforce housing. You know, it's something that we work together. But I think that, you know what, we all need a tax cut. But the bottom line is that we have to make sure that we're being good stewards with the budget that we're given.
In recent months, I guess, or time, Tesla has said is moving to Texas. Chevron said is moving to Texas. Neutrogena, I think, is gone. What's driving these companies out of California?
It's the regulations, legislation, it's the cost to do business in California.
So what would you do about it?
Well, again, what I would do is make this a business-friendly state like it used to be. We may be the 5th largest economy. It's something that they put out there. But we've got the highest low income in all, you know, the United States. We've got the largest homeless count when you're looking at this. We've got to make sure that instead of giving them sticks, we give them, you know, we're giving them incentives to stay there. And we're also making it that we can, you know, you can afford to live here, you can afford to work, and that's why I think workforce housing is so important, so that people can actually work and live in their community. But you've got to be, you know, we've got to work together with our businesses. Again, $30 billion we just lost last year because of corporations leaving, because of those that had jobs with them leaving, because of affordability. You're watching 40-year-olds, you're watching families, you're watching students that may be able to get through school here in college, but they can't afford to. We've got to make it so it's affordable again.
There was some out-migration from COVID years till, I think last year was a positive number finally, but we have lost some big corporations. Do they take the hit for the middle class tax cut, or what do you do?
Well, first of all, I'd like to say, you know, it's interesting to hear Lori talk about protecting big companies because those are the folks that that fund our campaign, big insurance companies and big oil companies. Well, I'm looking out for the little guy. And you know, the fact is, the reason that people are leaving and considering leaving, the reason that small businesses have to consider leaving is it's too damn expensive in this state. And that has happened during the 4 years that she's been in office, right? It's gotten worse, not better over those 4 years, right? So I want to get in there and right away, yes, make it a more business-friendly state, but I want to make it more business-friendly for our small businesses, who are those feeder businesses to the big businesses. We're a small business district. You know, I haven't run the numbers. We probably have more small businesses than almost any other district. And those business people, when I talk to them, when I walk around and I'm talking to my neighbors and I'm talking to people in our community, they say they're held to the same high standard as the large corporations, right? So we need to make sure our regulations get streamlined and tailored for small businesses to allow small businesses to thrive, to allow women-owned businesses to thrive, Latino-owned businesses to thrive, right? And get off the ground. That is what will lift our economy and make it more affordable for everybody.
If I may, one thing that he forgets to put out there is that I'm a business owner. I'm a small business owner. I've had a business for 27 years, and I do understand the concerns. When we have certain policy like AB5 that came up, it's hard to keep it.
You want to explain what AB5
Certainly.
was for our
That was a
viewers?
few years ago where basically if you're a small business owner, if you used at will workers, basically you would now, you would have to pay for their health care. You would be responsible for basically everything. And a lot of people, the reason why we're independent contractors is because we understand, we can work with our job, we can work with our hours. And so what that did is it basically took 3 million jobs out of it. And you had people leaving because they were the small businesses. You're right, small businesses are important. I'm endorsed by the Hispanic Chamber. I'm endorsed by California Chamber. I've been more job friendly than anyone you could probably imagine because I live it. I know how hard it was to keep, a business afloat.
There are people who say that the literal flood of undocumented people coming across the southern border, and I believe that somewhere around 300,000 have crossed or have been seen, I guess, by Border Patrol in the last 12 months. That complain that those people also affect certainly the lower tier kind of jobs. What do you do about that?
Well, I think when we talk about the border, the number one thing we need to do is secure the border right now.
What does that mean?
What that means is shutting the border down until we can actually take care of the problems that are within California and within this country. We've got fentanyl coming across the border and killing thousands of our young teens and family members. You know what? We are losing revenue coming in here. The public safety is a huge issue. So we need to secure right now, and we need to be able to fix what is broken in California and then get a good system that is ready that we can then look at how do we go forward and open it. But right now, we have to deal with the problems within California. California is basically the only state now that is just really open border. And you can ask pretty much anyone around, the safety is an issue. We've looked at what's happened. And so public safety first, let's deal with what we're doing. And keep in mind too, the more that come over here, that's a more burden on our health care. That's more going into our hospitals when we don't have staffing like we should. It's affecting everybody, but it is affecting low income. It's affecting middle class. It's affecting the entire state.
Chris, you've got lots of experience in this. What do we do?
Thank you for asking me that question. Yeah, well, look, we have the largest influx of immigrants into California of any state. And I can speak to this issue because, again, I worked for 16 years every day with Border Patrol agents to secure our border, to make it a safe place, to keep dangerous people out. So I know how to do that, and I know how to keep our communities safe too, right? So we do have to give the Border Patrol the equipment, the tools, and the added support to do their jobs. That's really what they need. They need to have people get out of the way, let them do their jobs. Now, I've also worked as a mayor on this, though, right? We have San Clemente Border Patrol Station right in the middle of our district. And speaking of fentanyl, we have more fentanyl interdictions thanks to the cooperation that I've been part of, joining up the Border Patrol with our San Diego County sheriffs and our Orange County sheriffs to stop that fentanyl. This area, this I-5 corridor, if you've driven through, you've seen that Border Patrol checkpoint. We have more interdictions, larger interdictions there than anywhere in the country because of that cooperative relationship that I've been able to be part of, right? So I'm keeping that border mission going and that public safety mission going as a mayor. But ultimately, the answer to this, and any Border Patrol agent would tell you this, by the way. I mean, I spent time on the Texas border in El Paso and the California border from San Diego all the way out to Yuma, is a comprehensive immigration bill so that we know who is coming into our country and we can track those folks, right? So there's Republicans who are stopping this from happening because they like the talking point. What we need is that comprehensive immigration system to track each and every person who's coming in. That is the way we get through this, and that is the way we protect California into the future as the state that has the largest influx of immigrants.
So in your mind, the comprehensive solution includes what components?
Both security, first security and public safety,
So
right?
finish the wall?
There are areas where the wall does work. There's a lot of areas where it doesn't work, right? Overall, larger issue, and you talk to Border Patrol agents and Chief Patrol agents who I work with all the time, they say it's the equipment, the tools, the training, and the added agents, right? So that's what you do first. You take it seriously. Then once you've got that security, then you get a program where you bring folks in, you put them through the vetting system, and you track them. And we need those folks in our workforce, frankly, right? But we want to be able to track them and make sure we know who's coming in. So then you get into that once you've got the security, and that will help our economy, especially gets back on its feet here. Through that comprehensive system, you will allow and empower Border Patrol agents to do what they want to do. Track the violent terrorists, the cartel members, right? The people who want to do us harm. They can focus on that if we have that comprehensive system that there was a bipartisan package to do, by the way, that Republicans at the federal government killed.
If you could fashion a comprehensive immigration policy and legislation, and I realize that's mostly a federal
Right.
issue, but what would the components be in your mind?
Well, I think first of all, we need to have the support of our governor. He makes a lot of decisions, and he has really done nothing to step out and make it secure. I ask you, do you think our border is safe and secure?
No, I think we need to make progress on that, absolutely.
Right,
But it's happened during the time you've been in the assembly that it's gotten worse. And when I get there, I'm going to make it better.
So you're going to make it better
Right.
with the federal, with it being a
Absolutely,
federal
working in
issue.
partnership with the federal government, yes.
Okay. Back to your solution would include what? Then?
Number one, secure the border, and
Okay.
what that means is closing the border right now. Also, we need to know who is actually in our country right now, who is in our state, so that we do know that we've got high risk, terrorism. We've had sex criminals, rapists come in here. We've got to make sure we know who's in our state so that we can protect the citizens of California. We also need to, again, get a comprehensive thing. We had this working once. We have to make sure, though, if they're going to come in, you know what? We have to make sure that there are jobs. We have to make sure that, we have the resources. Right now, we can barely take care of our own in California. Again, we've got one of the highest poverty levels when it comes to the amount of people. 1 out of every 6, is at a lower income. So we've got to make sure, we've got to have a system that's working in California before we open the door and bring more in, because putting more in there and burdening the area that we've got right now, it's not working.
I just want to drive home the point. I prosecuted those dangerous people you're talking about and kept them out of our country.
Well, they're still coming in, though.
Yes, exactly. And so we need a prosecutor and a border patrol attorney like myself, someone who prosecuted those criminals and worked every day with Border Patrol agents at the state government to help secure our border and make us safer.
Let me move us off that dime slightly, and that is, California has among the strictest gun control laws in the nation. But is it enough? Too much? Just enough? What would you do?
I think we can always improve gun safety. And as a parent of kids that has to worry about my kids every single day, and we just had the shooting in Atlanta, there is always more we can do in California to make sure we keep dangerous weapons out of dangerous people's hands, right? And so California has more room to go. But I want to emphasize a point that I think you might be getting at, right? This isn't just a California problem. At the state level, we need to work with other states to ensure that those weapons aren't coming across from other states where there is less restrictive laws that are more dangerous for our kids, like Arizona and Nevada, right? And so I've done that with the Border Patrol. I've done that in Homeland Security to keep weapons from moving across state lines. And I can continue to work on that and keep our communities safe and our schools safe at the state level in California.
Is there a single thing that you would change about California's current gun laws, absent the interstate cooperation? Is there something you would advocate?
Well, one thing I think we can do is what Moms Demand Action has been working on, and I've worked in San Clemente to pass a resolution, and we're going city by city, but I think we should go statewide, and that is gun storage. Safe storage of firearms and safe storage of ammunition. Now, one thing a lot of people don't realize, we have a lot of veterans in our community because we have the largest Marine Corps base right in the middle of this district. Number one reason for veterans dying, suicide by weapons. They're in a bad mental health state and they have access to the weapons. So safe storage, and kids as well, right, are getting killed accidentally by access to weapons. So if I could do one thing, it would be safe storage of weapons. But I should also mention, as someone who's endorsed by Moms Demand Action and is working to keep our schools safe and our kids safe, along with responsible gun owners, by the way, and this is really popular amongst veterans groups for that reason, my opponent has one of the highest scores by the NRA in the entire state assembly.
Okay, Lori, do we have too much gun control? Too little gun control? Just right? What do we do, if anything? What do we need to do on a state basis with gun control?
Certainly. The first thing we have to do is make sure that we're protecting law-abiding citizens with their Second Amendment. However, the other thing is we have to do is make sure we are getting illegal guns out of criminals' hands. And you talk about working across, across the state, across the country. That was a bill that I actually got, worked with law enforcement, worked with the DA of San Diego. It's the APPS bill. It's the Arms Person System. And what that did is right now, it was from 1980. Our database is so old that they have no communication on anything. What this does now is it gave funding, plus it had funding to be able to train more of these officers. So if someone is arrested, with a felony and they've got a gun, they could go in and actually get that gun, whether it's out of their house, but get it out of their hands. Also, you may get a call, say in Sacramento, saying, listen, we've got so-and-so up here. I know they're in your database from down here. Here they are. So working across state lines, working across county lines, getting the small hanging fruit out and working on that. But we have to have education as well. And I think that I've worked with Senator Blakespear, and we talk about mental illness. That is something that's so important that, I supported when it came out there that, if you have a 5150, something that happens, you need to make sure if that person has a gun, it needs to be removed until that, it needs to be removed. That's where you're looking at how many that have committed shootings, have had mental illness. We have to make sure that we're protecting that person, but we're protecting Californians. And so working on that, is so important. So I think that, I think there can always be more safety issues. You can, and that's where I talk to law enforcement. I talk to them saying, what is that you need? And that's where we came up with the APPS program. The other thing is working with moms that have been there when I've with their Senator Blakespear. Absolutely. You know what? Public safety. We have to make sure that we are getting illegal guns and legal guns out of criminals' hands. That is the number one issue.
And you do that. How do you do that though? How do you get legal guns and illegal guns out of criminals' hands?
Well, I think first of all, we have to make sure, again, it's the database system, because they are out there. We have to make sure that we're getting those guns that are out there illegally taken up. Mm-hmm. Also, I think it's important that we have, when you're talking about gun controls, how do we get those out of their hands? I think it's very simple. We have to make sure that we are working hand in hand with our communities. We're talking about gun safety as well. I think education is very important.
Okay. California, I think point in time analysis last January or so determined that, I think it was point in time, California's got 180,000 homeless people. About a third of them are sheltered. Got a lot of people living on the street. It's been a recent Supreme Court decision that said cities can remove camps or public camping if they want, they wish. It doesn't seem to be a problem that's going away. The governor has been angry about the lack of accountability in the way, I think was it $20 billion or so over the last several years has been spent. What do we do about homelessness?
You know what, thank you, that's a great question. One thing while I was up there is we saw the numbers going up in homelessness every year. And we're like, where's accountability? So I co-authored a bill to make sure that you could go ahead and get an audit. $25 billion of our taxpayers for the last 4 years has been used on homelessness. And we said, all right, let's do an audit. They went and did an audit, and the only information they came up with was that the number of homeless has risen. They had no accountability of how many people have we gotten off the street, how many have gotten help with mental illness, how many have been treated with their addiction. Nothing. And so right there is a huge problem. We have to make sure we have transparency, we have accountability, and this money is going to a lot of different agencies. Every year we have to make sure that we take that budget and we look at the results and say, okay, is this program working? Great. You know what? Wonderful. Is this one working? Maybe not. Then we need to see, can it be fixed? And if this is not showing any results, it's got to go. We are spending money uselessly. Not to mention, if you look in Texas dropped their homeless count by about 25% over the last few years. Why? Because of connectivity. We have no connectivity in this state. We have 9 agencies overseeing hundreds of different nonprofits. You have to start like the Navigation Center in Oceanside, where you have the homeless person and you figure out, okay, is it addiction that they're out there? Is it mental illness? Is it the economy? Is it jobs? And then you start there, and you've got to go around, and you make sure that when they go from that place, there's another place that they can continue to go. Plus, if you look at the help that they're getting, drug rehabilitation, mental illness, it's not a 30-day fix. And that's one of the biggest problems we had with that is just after 30 days, you're putting them right back into the same situation. We have got to stay with these, with these residents that have these illnesses, that have addiction, for a lifetime. We have to teach them how to manage this. We have to stay with them. You don't just think you're going to fix this. So to me, the accountability is so important. And and that's something that I supported. We've got accountability coming up. We're waiting for the governor to see if he's going to sign that, because it'll be a whole different game changer.
Okay, you've got a city that has dealt with this a lot. What do you think?
Yeah, I think first of all, I'd like to say we've heard a lot about bipartisanship and problem solving and things like that. I'd just like to point out, my opponent has missed over 1,000 votes in the Assembly. It's hard to be bipartisan if you're not showing up for the vote. For the vote she has shown up, it's almost an entirely party line vote, right? So that's what we're getting. When you look at the one with the bipartisan record of accomplishment, including on homelessness, it's actually me that has that bipartisan record. I started out under a Republican administration in Homeland Security. I was in the Bush administration, the Obama administration, the Trump administration, and I've carried that over to the City Council. So on homelessness, I work with my Republican colleagues across the aisle to have a significant success on homelessness in San Clemente, especially during the time I've been as mayor. We rejected, and I agree, throwing the money at the problem is not the solution. That's what the state has done. That's what the state has done while my opponent's been up there in Sacramento, by the way. But we didn't do that in San Clemente. We rejected calls to build shelters. We rejected calls to give out free hotel vouchers and other giveaways. And we did what works. What works is hiring a highly skilled homeless outreach worker team, not to wait for people to come to them, to go out into the community, to engage with our unsheltered population and diagnose then and there what their issue is, and then connect them with the services that address that underlying condition so that they are permanently off the street, not just temporarily in a shelter, permanently. And that's how we drove down. We talk about Texas and 25%. San Clemente dropped about 25% in the year I was mayor on homelessness. We reduced homelessness about 25%, best in Orange County by a long shot. In fact, every other city, it went up other than San Clemente. How did we do it? We worked in a bipartisan way to have a system that is cost effective and works for our residents by connecting those homeless folks with the services they need, again, to address those conditions. And by the way, a lot of them veterans.
The outreach team that you use, is that connected to the police department or a social service department?
It is a city-run team that works collaboratively with our deputy sheriffs, but what we did is we empowered them to act. We hired the best professionals you could find, and we gave them the tools to address the system in the way that worked best for San Clemente. So I want to bring that statewide.
They're not uniformed officers then?
They're not uniformed officers. That helps them build some of the trust, but they work with the deputy sheriffs in case there is a dangerous situation.
A follow-up question that I'd like to ask to both of you. Federal policy from the Obama administration on has been housing first. Get people in shelters, then deal with whatever the causes are, whether it's mental illness, substance abuse, economic stress, so on and so forth. Do you agree with that federal policy of housing first?
No. And I think this is an example of how I go against my party when it serves our community, right? I stand up for our community and for policy over any kind of party.
Okay.
And that's because if you put someone in housing, and I mentioned this, without any of the services to address the underlying condition, you are cycling through the system and you are wasting money. If you don't have services in the housing, right, that is specifically tailored for those underlying conditions, be it substance abuse, be it mental health, or be it some other issue, then you are just kicking the can down the road. You're just punting the football. And we want solutions that work. So I disagree with housing first.
Okay. What do you think about housing first, Lori?
No, I completely agree with them. You know, putting someone that has an addiction, a roof over them, doesn't help them. We've got to make sure, again, like the navigation center that they have here, deciding what the issue is, what are their problems, what are their concerns, and addressing those first. So they may need to go into rehab. They might have to go into a place for mental health. We've got to fix the problem of what is really kind of the underlying issue of what's gone there. Then, you know what, you sit there and you make sure that you're working with them, you're making sure they've got skills to be able to be in the workforce, and then housing. But you can't just put someone in there and close the curtains and hope that they're going to get better. And if I may, I want to jump back because my opponent, likes to throw certain things out. And you may not know this, but when he said that I missed 1,000 votes, basically it was around 600 votes. And the reason why I want to say that is that this was when you have your last session, like the last 2 weeks, you have about 1,000 votes that you have to vote on. This was 2 years ago, and that was when I got a call. There was the second week before we were done. I got a call that my mother had had a stroke and she was in hospice. And I had to make that decision. Do I go back and say my goodbyes to her, or do I stay up there? Because what he didn't mention to you is I have a 94% attendance rate. That's way up there. But you know what? I put family first. And I don't know if you knew that, but I would hope that you didn't, that you would actually use something like that and put something like that out there when I was making a decision. And then I came back, and I was in that last week. And that last week, my mother passed away. I had an opportunity to say goodbye to her, on the floor. But that's a decision I would always do again. And also, when you're talking about bills, it's a little bit different. You can abstain on bills out there. You can abstain on bills when you're in city council, but basically, you have something that you're voting on, and it's one time there. We have all the committees. As me, I was sitting on 5 to 7 committees. And a lot of times, these bills are half-baked, and so I can't go ahead and support that. But when they're like, hey, we'll work on amendments, make that bill better, you can abstain. And that's what you do, is it's considered a no voting, but it also comes across as if you haven't voted. So again, I have a 94% attendance record that I'm very proud of. And again, there was a very good reason why I wasn't able to be there. And, I would hope that, because you're putting that out there, and I would hope that you wouldn't use that, because that is exactly what's happening. There's a lot of things that get out there.
I'm talking about the budget vote and the more tools for police to stop fentanyl votes. And I've never missed a city council meeting, and I have a family to take care of.
And you know what? I served 8 years on city council, 2-time mayor. And again, not only did I have one of the best records, but we were one of the top safest cities around. And so, you know what? We didn't have to deal with the homeless issue because we were in good shape and we were making sure we were doing what we needed.
And you were mayor at Laguna?
Laguna Niguel, yep, 2-time mayor and 8 years serving.
In July, Governor Newsom signed a bill that banned school districts from requiring school staff to disclose to parents information related to a student's sexual orientation or gender identity, to protect school staff from any retaliation if they refuse to let parents know. What did you think of that bill?
I voted no.
Why?
Because I really believe that parents, need to be involved in their kids' lives. And I think that it's important that teachers and parents work together. If there's something going on in your child's life, who knows better, the parent or government? I don't want government, making decisions for my child. What they leave out, though, is instead of saying, you know what, if there's something going on, why aren't we working with our mental health services that we have here, working with the teachers, working with the child, and working with the parent? So perhaps the parent needs to have more understanding of what's going on, but to completely take the parent out of the picture is just wrong. And I can tell you that to me is so important, that the parent has the right of making these decisions. You know what, again, government should not be taking care of our children. They should not be holding back information, because I'll tell you what, there are a lot of parents that were like, if I had the opportunity, but they've always, a lot of times they're sitting there and making parents look like they're the evil part, and it's not.
Okay. Same question, Chris.
Well, yeah, I'm a big believer in our public schools. I think every kid deserves a neighborhood public school, and I'm not only a product of California public schools, but my mom was a public school teacher, and I have 3 kids in our public schools, right? I'm deeply invested in our public schools, and that's why I'm endorsed by classroom teachers. So on this issue, and look, I'm very involved in our school. I'm on the PTA. I was elected by other parents at our K-8 school to be a school site counselor, where I get to be involved with administration about curriculum and about decisions like this. In this particular case, I think that we're looking at this a little bit wrongly. I don't think we should have teachers getting between parents and children and investigating kids about whether or not they may consider themselves a different gender. That's my problem with this. This is about calling upon school administrators and teachers to get into the parent-child relationship. I know what my kids are doing. I talk to them every day. I cook them breakfast. I drive them to school. I pack their lunches. I know what's going on with them, right? And I don't want teachers being obligated to get involved in that parent-child relationship and try digging down and reporting, investigating my child, right? So I think this is a little more nuanced than it's been portrayed.
Okay, so then my understanding of the bill was flawed, because I understood it to be a ban on school staff or administrators from letting parents know.
No, I think that's a mischaracterization,
Okay.
yes.
Fair enough. The revelation, 2 years ago, a year and a half ago, in the Twitter files, that there was a policy and practice split between obvious free speech advocates and those who think that it is wiser to combat information and disinformation. There was some fair amount of information or evidence of the federal government being involved in pressuring social media companies. I'm curious how you square on this issue.
The federal government getting involved in social media companies?
That government, any government, should get involved in the business of trying to police or correct, pressure social media to do either correction of misinformation or disinformation, as opposed to the advocates of free speech who say it's not the government's job.
Yeah.
Where are you?
Yeah, well, that's a good question. I spent a lot of time in Homeland Security actually monitoring this, because disinformation in our last few elections has really been a problem. People not understanding what people stand for, and misunderstanding policies that are being proposed. So I'm a huge free speech advocate, and I'm a huge freedom advocate, right? I believe that we should be able to make our own choices, like women should be able to make their own choices about seeking abortion. But we want to make sure the federal government does have a role here to ensure that people are getting the correct information, right? And so, yes, there needs to be some regulation of whatever media companies or internet companies, the information that they're putting out, so that people are getting accurate information, and that needs to be balanced against the free speech rights and the rights of the media, under the Second Amendment, to educate us about what's going on. Now, that is mostly a federal government problem, but here we are the 5th largest economy, so California needs to be involved. And there has been legislation by my friend Rebecca Bauer-Cahan in this area as it deals with artificial intelligence, because that's really the next phase of disinformation, is artificial intelligence in a very sophisticated way pushing out that misinformation. We're California, right? We're a world leader on this. We're ahead of many countries, most countries. We do need to be at the forefront of protecting our residents from false information. So we need to partner with the federal government, with the Department of Homeland Security, my colleagues over there, to ensure we are regulating AI and ensuring that false information, misleading information, isn't getting out to our residents.
Okay. Lori,
Right.
where are you on this continuum?
You know what? AI, we know technology can be very helpful, but we also know that there can be dangers. And there were bills that I've supported with AI, because that really was an issue, is making sure that our voters have trust in our elections. And one of the concerns was with AI coming in, where you could see that you could take someone and just put words in your mouth, sounds like who it is, you know, and it would be deceiving to those that are looking to vote and making sure they have the correct information. What this would do would make it that you would put a watermark if there's any advertisement coming up here. And I've been in seminars in regards to AI. We have to make sure that we are safe. And again, there are things that are coming up that we're not going to know until they come out, and then we're going to have to deal with them. So I think national security, I think putting confidence back into the voter is so important. And so having trust, and when it comes to AI, I think that we have to work, again, you know, across the federal lines and the state. And I think we have to also even look at Facebook and, you know, talk about, you know, was the government pushing them to, you know, take certain free speech off there? You know, is that something that, you know, we have to be very careful about? You know, that's what makes California, that's what makes America great, is we do have free speech, but we have to make sure that the right information is being put out there. And I think there should be some type of liability when it comes to, you know, the internet.
In what fashion do you mean that?
I believe that we,
Companies being liable for
I think that
misinformation or disinformation?
you know, what you'll find, they're saying, well, we've got people watching that, but do we have enough people actually seeing what's going out there? So I just think that we have to work together and make sure that, you know, information that's misinformation is being caught.
Okay. There are, I don't know, 10, probably 11 ballot measures on the November ballot this year. Some of them seem to me rather anodyne. Some of them, I think, have some sting to them, depending on how you view them. 3 of them are bond related and pushing $10 billion for school parks construction, $10 billion for parks, energy, and water. And one of them reduces the supermajority vote to 55% for local housing and public infrastructure. Those would be Props 2, 4, and 5. Do you support those?
I support the climate bond. I can tell you that there is over $1 billion that will be going for coastal erosion, and that is a bill that I was proudly supported. Also, when it comes to the school bond, and these aren't local bonds, these are state bonds that would come out of general funding. You would not be getting hit on your property taxes like you would a local tax.
Yes, they're state bonds.
Right. So I sit on the state allocation board. I was able to bring in $20 million into my district because of that, meeting that 50-50 match that you have. Because right now we have schools that, you know, are not up to grade. We've got schools that need to be that aren't safe with our kids right now. So to me, that's an important bond to make sure that we can get infrastructure, and the money will go to infrastructure, and that's what's so important. That's what we need. However, Proposition 5, you know, to me, that is basically completely taking Prop 13 away. When the people passed Prop 13, what it did is it allowed you, you would have to have 2/3 of a vote in order to pass like a local tax. This is now going to make it 55%. And so this is completely undermining Prop 13 and those voters that did it. And my other concern is when you move something like that, it's much easier to go ahead and get 55% vote than it is 2/3. And you can look at certain cities like LA. I mean, they're paying, you know, 12, 13 cents taxes because little by little, you've got more and more people saying, hey, well, we want our fair share. We want to get a tax here. We want to get a water tax. We want to get a local tax for this. I think that, you know what, if it's a good bill, you do the right thing, you know what, you keep people informed, you can get 2/3 if it's right. But to bring it down to 55% completely undoes Prop 13, which is probably one of the best things we have and what keeps people in California able to actually stay here, at least with the propositions and the property tax.
Okay, I'll come back to Prop 13 in a second. Chris, what do you think about Prop 2, 4, and 5?
Yeah, well, I mean, first of all, I want to be on the record, I'm against any new taxes, right? So we're not talking about taxes here, but we have a very challenging environment, as we've said, the rising cost of living out there, and we have to be very sensitive to that. I do want to make a point, too. My opponent here said that she was able to get $20 million. That's just not true. I talked to our school board members, and I talked to our administrators, and just sitting on the board isn't getting the money. That was fought for by our local school boards, that money. That they were the ones that were responsible, and taking credit for their hard work, I don't think bodes well. But I'll give you this. In terms of the bonds, my priority, public safety first, right? That has to be. Education second. And then housing and environmental bonds after that, right? So that's the order that I would progress in terms of my priorities of those. You Yeah, I do support the bonds in this because we do need money for our schools. As a parent, I know that our schools are basically falling apart in our district, and we need to attract the best talent. We need to hold them accountable. We need to have the funding to do that. So education, for sure, critically important, along with public safety. You know, not one of those bonds directly, although there was some public safety components. If we aren't secure, we can't thrive. So we've got to focus on public education. We've got to focus on our future, our kids, and making sure we get back to having the best schools, like when I went through the California public schools, is a top priority for me.
What about Prop 5, reducing the voting requirement to 55% for local housing and public infrastructure?
Yeah, that's a tricky one. I know there's been some amendments made recently, and I haven't had the chance to look through all of the recent amendments. So that one, you know, I haven't fully decided yet.
Okay.
If I could,
Sure.
I just want to, you know, you'd said that you do not support taxes,
Yes.
increased taxes, but you did support on your city council to put a local tax onto the ballot for the voters.
You want me to answer that now?
Sure.
Happy to. Okay, I'm absolutely against any new taxes, and that is wrong. That is plainly wrong, and you know it, Lori. I did not support a tax. What I supported was allowing our residents to choose. I'm a big proponent of local control, allowing our residents to choose whether they want to support and save our beaches. Okay. That's what I voted to give them. And by the way, they shouldn't even have to make that choice. We are a donor city, we are a donor county, we're a donor district, both San Diego and Orange counties. We pay our fair taxes. And there's more than enough taxes paid, by the way, to save our beaches, which is what she's talking about. The only reason our residents even have to consider this, and the only reason that I felt the obligation to let them decide, not a government official, is because she has let them down. She's failed us. She hasn't gotten a dime of appropriated state money. Our congressman got $10 million. Lori has gotten $0. Our tax money is going to San Francisco and LA instead of our district.
Okay.
So that's why residents have to make this
And
tough
keep
choice.
in mind who makes that decision. You have a governor that decides how much we get back. We are a donor city, and we get something like 4 cents to the dollar compared to San Diego, who's getting almost 50-some cents.
When I go up there, I'm going to change that.
You're going to change that.
Okay.
How?
We are about 3 minutes out before closing statement, so I'm going to run by a few more ideas real quick. Prop 32 is $18 minimum wage. For it or against it? Very quickly.
I'm against it. I don't.
This is specifically for healthcare workers. We have tremendous healthcare needs and rising healthcare costs, especially amongst our veterans, and we need to make sure we keep the healthcare staff to take care of them, and we need to do that here.
But this shouldn't just be for healthcare workers. It should be across the table. We shouldn't just be picking a career or a job that gets the 18 and then someone else doesn't. And we also have to make sure that we could do tax credits for these businesses. We are short in healthcare, as he said, but it shouldn't just be healthcare. Why are we picking and choosing winners and losers?
Okay. Prop 3 would allow cities to impose rent control. For or against?
I'm against that. And again, this will put me at odds with my party sometimes. We certainly need to drive down housing costs. I'm going to work to do that, especially for renters. But imposing government-mandated New York-style rent control is not something we need in our district.
Okay. Laura?
I'm completely against that, as I own property, and you have to also make sure that most of our mom and pops, this is a retirement. They might have 1 or 2 apartments, and to sit there and take, and go ahead and give them rent control when they've got the cost of utilities going up, they've got mortgages to hit. It's so important that, we have to just make it affordable, period, so that people can afford to pay the rent.
Okay. Prop 36 changes the old Prop 47 and increases some penalties on theft, some fentanyl-related crimes. Good idea or bad?
Fantastic idea, and I'm proud to say I'm the co-author on this project. And I can tell you, we know the damage that was happened with Prop 47 10 years ago, where it said to protect schools and children, and it did the opposite. It basically went ahead and it put felons into misdemeanors. You wonder why the crime rate has gone up. You look at the retail theft. This is probably one of the most important bills with public safety. That passes, you're going to see things get much better.
Okay. Chris?
I'm a prosecutor. That's why I'm endorsed by prosecutors. And again, this might put me at odds with some in my party, but I do support closing those loopholes, right? Those loopholes on sentencing for especially our retail theft and drug trafficking offenders. We need to increase those penalties for those folks. So I do support that. And look, the governor and the speaker are continuing to work on other ways to do that because we don't know whether this is going to pass or not. I support those as well.
Okay. We are basically down to some time for closing statements. Lori, would you like to offer a closing statement?
Okay. Do you want me to?
Probably your camera.
Okay, great. Okay, I want to say thank you so much for the opportunity to be here, and I want to say thank you for letting me serve you. You know, I've worked extremely hard for these last 4 years, and again, to me, we have to leave our politics and our party at the door and we talk about policy. That's how we make good policy, and that's how we make sure that California is safe. You know what, that they can afford to live here. And we have to make sure that we're putting money into our education. Also, major issues like coastal erosion. But one thing that I'm proud to say is I don't just go for one subject. I've reached out where we've had an apprenticeship bill. I've worked with trades and labor. I am supported by trades, labor, all law enforcement in California, firefighters, farmers, and California Chamber and Latino Hispanic Chamber. So I work with businesses, I work with law enforcement, I work wherever there is. And what I do is I reach out to them saying, what is the concern? We're not always going to agree on everything, but you know what? We can make good policy. So I'm proud to have actually gotten the first apprenticeship bill, because right now you see high school to Harvard. We now have a bill that will be high school to hard hats. That's a trade that, you know what, hasn't happened very often. And we've got kids that, you know what, maybe college isn't in the picture, but you know what, they've got a skill where they can go and get an education, debt-free, benefits, and they can actually raise and earn great money so they can afford to stay here. So that's something that I've been working with labor, working with trades. I work with anyone that has a good idea. And again, I'm not going to sit here and going, I. There is no I in team. This is an effort that you work across the aisle in order to get your bills passed.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Lori Davies. Chris Duncan.
Ken, thank you for the lively discussion. Lori, thank you for being here as well. Yeah, I'd like to close out, again, looking out for our residents. That's who I'm thinking about. I'm a prosecutor, mayor, and a dad of 3 kids living in our community. By the way, my wife's a small business owner. I'm a business owner too. So I see and I've experienced the struggles that our families are going to with how expensive it is to live in this state and making that really tough choice about whether they should move away. But really what people are looking for is that change, right? Someone who's going to give them that hope. And they want someone who shares their values too. And the fact is, my opponent here has extreme positions on issues that people care about. I have here a pledge she signed. Supporting a ban on abortion nationwide, even in cases of rape and incest. I would love to ask her, if we had time, why don't you trust women to make those healthcare decisions, Lori?
I'd actually love to respond.
But she also went to a political rally with a now convicted January 6th domestic terrorist serving 12 years, where she spoke very highly of this person and they spoke highly of her. Those are extreme positions. That's not where our district is. They care about the kitchen table issues, lowering their costs, keeping kids safe. That's what I've been doing my whole career at Homeland Security and as a mayor and as a member of our community as a dad. So I'm asking all of you for that chance to make that change, for a better and brighter future for all of us, right? For our middle-class families, for our seniors on a fixed income, and our veterans and our children. Please give me that chance. I would appreciate your vote to be your next Assembly member and deliver that California dream for all of us.
Very briefly, Lori, would you care to respond to the
Yeah, absolutely.
assertion?
First of all, this is the same rhetoric that he's been using when we talk about insurrection and being an event. This was before the 2020 election to begin with. I was asked to go to an event where I spoke. I didn't have I didn't know who this person was. And again, this was before the election. So you can keep saying whatever you want to do, but be honest at least, put the facts out there. And we talk about abortion. And you know what?
Very quickly.
Okay, very quick. You know what? I think it's really important that, it is a constitutional law to be able to have an abortion in this state. It was done in 2022. The people spoke. What we need to do is we need to move forward. what is important to me, real quick, what's important to me is make sure that, you know what, no woman should ever have to make a decision. Do I keep a child or do I have to abort? We have to make sure we have the resources so that they never have to make that decision. So you can keep going in the back.
A woman should choose, not a government official. That's why women are
And
behind
that's
me
why-
and the nurses have supported me, and you're on the wrong side of this issue, Lori.
And you know what? And that's why we left it up to the voters to decide.
Okay, thank you very much for that lively ending. So I appreciate both of
My
you
pleasure.
coming and talking to us today. I'd like to thank these candidates, Chris Duncan and Lori Davies. Please make sure to vote this November. It's really important to get out there. Viewers can watch this conversation and other election races, particularly Oceanside City races, on koct.org. We will stream this conversation again on that website as a video on demand. I'd like to thank you, the voters, and say good afternoon to you.
KOCT, its board of directors, staff, and the city of Oceanside do not support nor promote any candidates. We provide the following program as a public service for voters. All candidates have been invited to participate in this program, but not all were able to or chose to do so.
You're watching KOCT Television in Oceanside.